Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where I would like to do a rescue mission of that druid that we left in orbit of Luna. So let's just check here real quick. This is a Brigo orbit and a Brigo flyby. We could probably do those at the same time, but for the time being, we're not going to do those just yet. I want to head into the tech tree because we're going to need to think about getting things like parachutes. That would be a useful thing. So we'll unlock that. I would also like to grab... Let's see. Where would we have some sort of a pod? And perhaps even a heat shield? We have access to heat shields right now. Okay. So that looks good. This gives us a small bay and a cargo bay. Piston leg and new contracts. Okay. And that is additional parachute tech. Heat shield coating tech, yeah, that's okay. But what I really want here is some sort of a crew pod, right? So that would be ideal here. I'm not sure what we actually need in terms of tech for that, where this might be. But it's probably around somewhere. Side detacher side and max stages 99. Oh my. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. For now, we're not too interested in that, but I want to actually just hop into our builder here and see what we've got available right now. Do we have any sort of a pod with an airlock that is currently available? So this is our command setup here, and the answer is no. Okay, that's fine. We do have this parachute here, and we have drogue chutes as well. So that will be useful. Okay. So I'm assuming these work probably fairly similar to how they do in KSP, and probably not as similar to how they would work in reality. So let's hop back into the tech tree. We definitely need access to some sort of a pod here. So let's just go through a bunch of these. I'm not sure what any of this means at this point. So deadweight, strut, block, and ball. No, definitely not any of that. So this is the overall tech tree here. That's all landing gear there. Okay, I'm just wondering where the even section for this would be. So that's jet afterburners. This is commercial flight. Okay. RTGs, yeah, that's fine, but that's really not what we're looking for. This is all like jet engine stuff over here. So the question is, where do we have access to crewed command pods? That's a docking port, that's a small bay and a docking bay. Bigger parachutes, thicker heat shield coating. I wonder if we're supposed to make them. Doorless cargo bay. Maybe we're supposed to make them. I don't know. I'm not seeing too much tech for it at this point. So here's crew limit and crew capsule size. That's probably what we want, actually. So crew capsule size of 150. Crew compartment. Space capsule, cockpit. This looks right. Okay, we're going to grab that. That's what we're looking for. Fantastic. So with that, we are now going to ditch this. And we're going to ditch this guy as well. So we probably don't need this command disk either. So I'm wondering if we can simply put in our space capsule here and ditch this command disk. Can we reroute this? We could just keep the command disk on there, I suppose. That's probably fine. Okay, so now the question is, does this have an airlock? I assume this is the airlock. Most likely. Let's just check in here. Includes built-in gyroscope for attitude control, yes. And we can set its power level. Okay, that's noted. It has a capacity of 1. Okay, so we want this to actually be uncrewed, so the command disk is fine here. And then we're going to need to have an interstage here. So that would end up being a very small interstage. about like that. But then we'd also want to have a heat shield down here. And the question is that a separate part? Heat shield coating is a different thing, right? Ah, here's a heat shield. Okay. So something kind of like that. Then I'd like to have a nose cone parachute. And then maybe a pair of drogue chutes. So that would go something like that. And then we would put that in radial X, maybe even X4 symmetry. So then that would end up being something kind of like that. Hypothetically. Okay, this is probably a little bit of a heavier payload, and this is intended to be able to return as well, right? So the question is, are we going to need additional fuel up here? And I think the answer to that is probably yes. I'm going to take this up to 6 meters in length. And now the question is, what does that do to our overall thrust to weight when we're starting? 1.94? Okay. So I would like to make sure that this part is empty, which I believe that it is. And I'm going to save this as our crude launcher. Okay, so that's fine. This is now intended to be able to come back as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and lift this off, although I kind of want to change the angling on these guys to be like that. Yeah, that's a little bit more correct with the front face, so that seems better. I'm also interested in potentially boosting the engine size of these over here, but I think we're probably good. 1.94 thrust to weight should be decent. So I'd like to do a quick re-entry test of this guy. So let's just bring this out to the alley pad, and this is going to be reverted. I just want to see if the parachutes work as I expect them to. Oh, staging. We should probably think about staging. Let's actually retry / undo and exit. I want to go into the staging and make sure that this is set up correctly here. So this is currently set up very, very wrong. I'm glad I checked. The parachutes are going to go up here. This interstage is going to go here. We've still got a fairing base here. Apparently so. We're going to get rid of that fairing base and then reconnect this like that. Okay, so that stage goes away. This is all of our Goblin solid rocket motors firing all at once in stage 1. That is correct. Then our 2 side boosters fall off. Then our main SRB falls off, and this gnome engine ignites. Then we have this interstage up here, which exposes our heat shield. And then I'd like to have one more here, because I would like to have these drogues be in a separate stage, but that should actually be stage 5. So it should end up being like this. Okay, let's save that craft. And now let's put this out on the pad. Beautiful. So first things first, let's make sure this achieves orbit. That is mission number 1. And I'm going to do this in 2x speed. Okay, so we're going to head on over to 60-degree pitch here. We can see our battery is draining out, but I'm not too concerned about that right now. So, first things first, we're taking this up to orbit. That is mission number 1 here. And then we're going to do a quick re-entry test to make sure that this is sufficient on the parachutes. Excellent. So I'm watching our apoapsis here as our fuel burns out. This seems fairly similar to what it was before, but it was definitely a little bit lower. Okay, let's lock this to orbital prograde for right now. Well, actually, to be honest, we should be fine just being at 0 pitch. Okay, we can see time to apoapsis is dropping. That's fine. We may need to go back to orbital prograde, though. We'll see. So we see our orbital speed is definitely increasing here. What's our thrust to weight? 0.55? Okay, yeah, that's not great. So we probably will actually have to nose up a fair amount to compensate for that. In fact, at 0.55, we should have to go to like 40 degrees. Even that's not enough? Okay. Yeah, that's spicy thrust to weight there. So we're at the apoapsis right now. So this thrust to weight is definitely non-great. We're currently just trying to fight gravity, and we're going to be going down at this point. So we definitely pitched over too much. I want to take this back to the launch specifically, and I want to try leaving it at the 60-degree marker for now. So we're just going to put this at 60 degrees, and we're just going to leave it there and see if our thrust to weight is good enough to compensate for that. If not, we're going to need to do something about it, but I suspect this will be okay. I think we just pitched over too far. I wasn't compensating for the added fuel here, so that should be reasonably fine. Okay, so our SRBs on the side are going to be burning out very, very shortly here. That's okay. They are gone as of now. Get out of here. Fantastic. We're going to go into orbital mode here. Our base level SRB is going to be gone shortly. There we go. And we weren't throttled up. That would help. Okay, so I'm burning at 60 here. I actually want to bring this over to 45 for the moment. And we'll see what that ends up doing. So we can see that our time to apoapsis is currently dropping, but our apoapsis is going up by a fair amount. Our apoapsis is not yet out of the atmosphere, so I think we might have to boost up that first stage to compensate for the weight increase in this fuel. The apoapsis is now out of the atmosphere, so that's good. Okay, I'm just looking at our current setup here and thinking, yeah, if we were propelled a little bit further with those SRBs, I think that would be very, very useful. So time to apoapsis is still ticking down, so we definitely have a thrust to weight issue here. I do want to have this increased amount of fuel in this stage, for sure. That said, it's only showing as being 3 kilometers per second right now in its DV, which is a little spooky, to be honest with you. So there's that. And you can see here, we have passed our apoapsis and are beginning to go down. So we clearly need additional thrust here. So let's bring this back, and we're going to undo and exit. So that is not necessarily shocking, but I do want to take a look at this engine. Is there anything we can do about it to boost it up? I mean, we could boost its size to like 200%. Well, that's hilarious. Okay, while we're working on that, we could bring this engine up to be about like that. And then these side boosters would have to be moved as well. So we would have to... Can we clip the camera in here? What did I just do? I duplicated these. Okay. So I'm going to detach that, and then I'm going to grab these guys and do something like that. Okay. Now we're going to need to grab all of this and just attach it in at like 270. Should be fine. And then that'll be okay, but we're going to have some thrust to weight issues here. No doubt about that. So let's duplicate this around. That's not how I wanted it to get cloned. Okay. And now we can't detach this. That's exciting. Okay. Well, that is definitely not how this was intended to be attached. I guess we're going to need to get rid of it. Well, that's okay. I want to check in on these engines down here. So these are maximally sized. We could simply do this number and bring in a series of additional engines like this. And see how that goes. It's a very, like, Soviet-style design there. And we can see our price for this launch is significantly higher, but that is understood. So now what I would like to do is I'd like to get some, like, stabilizers on this, I feel like. So let's put on some fins. This is not going to be the size that we need, for sure. I want these to be... Apparently I can't grab this arrow. That's interesting. I'd like this to be about like that. Apparently this is the largest size that we can make it. Sure. I guess that's fine. Okay, let's put it about there, and then let's give it 4x radial symmetry. So that's not going to be great, right? Our thrust to weight is 1.6. So now what I would like to do is I would still like to have some side boosters on this. They should be quite cheap, and we're going to have to recreate them from scratch. So we're going to do something like this, and I'm going to put in a fuel tank, like that. Then I'm going to put in a nose cone, like that. And this fuel tank is going to get stretched down to be about there. And then I'm going to grab these engines, and we're just going to do this number. Sure, I guess you can be centrally located. That's fine. And then I feel like we can position these a little bit better. Something kind of like this, except this isn't ideal. So I think we should take this down to 5. And then this should be at 5x symmetry as well. And then should be positioned about like that or so. Then we have one more set in here, and this goes back up to 6. And then these would be positioned like... Ooh, yeah, this is clipping awkwardly. Yeah, this is a very awkward setup overall. Something kind of like that. Okay, and then this would be duplicated around. Like that. We could even do this in 4x. This is not really changing our thrust to weight, so that is certainly noted. And that's a lot more money, so I want to keep this at 2x if we can. But we're definitely not having all that much additional... Like, this is not adding thrust to weight here. So that, of course, indicates that we need additional engines out here. So I'm going to move these engines... Why is this moving in singular? Okay, let's undo that, and let's bring this back to here. There we go. So now what I want to do is I want to get these here. I'm going to duplicate another round of engines here. Like that. That's still 1.6. Interesting. Okay, I'm now suspecting... I did not mean to do that. There we go. I'm now suspecting that the issue is actually staging. It is indeed. These interstages go here. Okay, that's much better thrust to weight. That might be too much thrust to weight, in fact. To that end, I'm going to bring this up to 10 meter. There we go. 2.22? Sure. I have no idea what the timing on this is going to end up being like. But that should be a lot more power. So let's go ahead and put this out on the pad. And let's see how this goes. This is going to be interesting, for sure. So the idea here is I want to take this over to 45 degrees at this point, and I want to burn at 45. So let's go ahead and launch this guy in 2x. This is still a test flight. Okay. If this is too much thrust to weight, then we're going to see aero damage up here. We'll see if that ends up happening. But for now, this looks pretty decent. We're going to be ditching these side boosters in the eventual times. Yeah, they're definitely burning out before the main boosters. That's good. Okay, so now we ditch that. And the main boosters have quite a lot of power here. So this is going to put us up to a pretty high apoapsis. That's good. We've still got 10% fuel here. We're still working on heading over. Okay, 2% fuel remaining. And 0% fuel remaining. And off we go. At this point, I want this guy to be at 0 degrees. Because this is a very high apoapsis right now, so that looks good. Let's check our orbital velocity. That's actually quite high, so that looks good. Our thrust to weight is up to 1.0 at the very beginning there. Overall, it's a lot more expensive, but I think it'll do. So all I'm trying to do right now is get us up into orbit. And I'm noting our stage delta V here is not necessarily the absolute greatest for this rescue mission. That is absolutely noted. But I think it's probably enough. Probably. So let's just bring this on over, and we need to accelerate up about another kilometer per second. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of mass up here. I do want to extend out these solar panels, so we're going to do exactly that. I am concerned about the mass levels, though. Honestly, with how much further this is being projected, I think we can cut down on this engine a little bit. And I'm going to do that, but let's just get this into orbit and make sure that our parachute situation is working correctly. So for now, I just want to get into an orbit, and yeah, I think we bump down this guy a bit. The ISP is still 279, but I think the mass of this engine is higher than we'd like it to be. Okay, so at this point, we have a very high apoapsis, and our periapsis isn't all that high. I'm going to take us around to retrograde, and we are going to start burning retrograde here. Or more specifically, we're going to take this down to -90, and we're going to drop this apoapsis down a bit. Okay, so something about like that. Now I'm going to go back to prograde. And we're going to burn this direction, getting ourselves some amount of orbital speed, because I want to be similar. Put your Druids on a stable orbit for the first time. I don't think we have Druids in here, but we're at a similar speed for being in orbit. Actually, we are in orbit. I didn't intend to be in orbit here. We're out of fuel and we're in orbit. That's not ideal. So that's obviously a problem. And the reason why that's a problem is we want to do a re-entry test. Okay. I intended to just accelerate us up to very close to orbital speeds and then drop us down in a suborbital trajectory. That didn't end up happening. So let's just, let's undo and exit this. I think that there's too much power in this current liquid-fueled engine up here. So I would like to crank this down a little bit. So we can see that that'll increase its mass. Yeah. So the thrust to weight here is currently, if we go into vacuum, yeah. So shock diamonds start to appear at about 30 kilometers. That's understood. Okay. So this nozzle throat size decreases efficiency in a vacuum. So I want to bring that down, I think. Specific impulse is going up, yes. And the nozzle length improves vacuum efficiency, and that's okay. The size here, I would like to drop down a fair amount. But actually, I think 200 is about the right size, looking at this. Okay, so it'll be something like this. Now, let's try launching this one more time here, because I do want to get that test done. And we're going to set this at, again, 45 degrees. And off we go. I may actually ditch these fins. That's probably useless mass at this point. But I guess they might be useful for some amount of stabilization. Probably not, though, to be honest. Okay, so let's hop over into orbital velocity here. And to be honest, I want to just bring this all the way over to 0 pitch. Okay, so our side boosters are gone. Off they go. And our main booster is still accelerating us up here. Cool. 10% fuel left on it. And we can see that our apoapsis is definitely a little lower than it was, but this is relatively fine. So at this point, what we can do is we can A, ditch this. There we go. And B, we can just simply come in here, plan burn at apoapsis, and we can just get ourselves a good old burn here. Accuracy not recommended. Interesting. Okay, so we should probably just be burning right now. That's fine. Let's do it. So I'm guessing the accuracy not recommended means that we're too early, or rather too late for this burn. So that is fine. We are just going to ditch this. That looks okay, and we're going to burn here for the time being. So currently we can see time to apoapsis 2.8 minutes, and this should be absolutely fine to burn here. Now our thrust to weight is going to be much, much lower, but we have a fair amount of additional DV in this. Actually, not that much additional. This is 3.8. That's not as much DV as I was expecting to get out of this change. Okay. Well, I'm just going to let this go for now. We're going to accelerate this up as close to suborbital speed, or rather, as close to orbital speed as we can. I'd like this to be a good simulation. I think we need to tune this engine a little bit more, and maybe have this be a third stage, and have a second stage back here be intended to achieve orbit. That may end up being the right way to go, because this thrust to weight is now very, very low for achieving orbit, and it's tough to achieve that balance. No doubt about that. But for now, let's just continue to accelerate this up, and I'm actually going to cut this engine right now, and we're going to ditch all of this. Again, this will be reverted. And I want to be here, yes, and I want to be facing retrograde. Okay, so we're going to take this around to a fair amount of additional speed here. There we go. And we're accelerating up here, we can see. So that is reasonably fine. We're on a course to impact the planet, and so the fastest we can go here is 2x. Okay, that's noted. So this interstage didn't push us very far apart, but we had a fair amount of fuel left in there. We definitely need to tune this stage. There's no doubt about that, but I want to test our parachute conditions here. I'm not sure that our stage is actually going to stage the parachutes. So there's that. But you can see our orbital velocity is picking up here, and by the time we hit the atmosphere here, in theory, we should be moving fairly close-ish, I would hope, to being at orbital velocity. Hopefully. The main test here is how much drag, heat, and slowdown we'll have from our chutes and our heat shield. So that is going to be interesting to note for sure. I'm also noting that our trajectory is very off because we don't have any more battery. Okay, noted. We should probably move these onto the capsule itself then. Okay, so we're in atmosphere right now. This is trying to flip around. Yeah, this is because we don't have any battery. The interstage is taking heat damage. So we definitely found some issues with this. That's for sure. Okay, so it exploded due to excessive heat damage. That's because our attitude was the wrong way. No doubt about that. So let's end that flight and undo it. We knew that that was always going to be a potential risk there. So I'd like to certainly move our solar panels to be about don't love this positioning. I don't like the way this snaps necessarily, but I guess there will be relatively fine, or perhaps it would be slightly better to be back like here. Oh, I hate the way that that angles. Here? No. I guess we'll put it there. Okay, I still hate the way that that angles there, though. We'll just call it good here. This is good enough. So that'll do for now. That'll help us hold attitude correctly. But this this stage in general here still needs some work. So it's clear that our nozzle throat size didn't really change our DV enough to make that worthwhile. Yeah, the higher thrust to weight is better for us here than the 300 meters per second of delta V. That is definitely true. Now, if we were to bump this up to a maximum here, that would be a lot more DV, but... or not that much more DV, actually. I think that we want this to be at about 200%. So that'll be fine. And I'm also thinking about increasing... well, first off, we can move this inner stage down a bit. And then we can move this guy up to be like 20 meters tall or so. And just get a little bit more power out of that. Now, I'm going to ditch these wings, or rather these fins. I don't think they're useful. I think they're just dead weight. So this should get us that little bit further. Okay, I'm going to save this, and next episode, we're going to run another test on this to see if this ends up working. This should work, in theory. We'll see. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods. Actually, I'm going to make a small change here. Specifically, I'm going to detach all of this, grab the interstage and the heat shield. Apparently we can't detach this anymore. Okay, never mind. I was going to move the command disc up here, but it's okay. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, Kintogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.